All right, we're live. Dana, how you doing?
I am doing great. How are you doing today, Van?
Doing fantastic. Welcome everybody to our national masterclass leaders call. This is my favorite call, and we do this every couple weeks. And today we have a call, as I just sent an email out, long overdue. Dana is one of my most favorite people in the business, and I've had a chance to work with her over the last year, and I've really got to see her grow. And she is on a major role. So today, guys, she's going to talk about recruiting and how to improve recruiting at a leadership level. But I think for any owner that's listening, you really should be taking notes as well, because what she's done over the last 6 months has been incredible. And Dana, you came from the retail business, so you weren't doing door-to-door pre-COVID, right? And then COVID happened, and there was no retail. So you kind of had to say, well, what am I going to do next? And you stepped into door-to-door with no door-to-door background. And now you've been on one of the best runs of any door-to-door owner. And one of the big reasons why is because you've came in and recruited like no other owner has. And so that's really been your thing, is you brought the retail mentality of recruiting into door-to-door. And guys, excuse me, in Houston, she has 50 people in her office. She's sending out 12 to 15 day of observations a day. So all of her leaders are getting a chance to interview every day. She's averaging 10 new starts a week. Her office is doing over 400 apps a week on Ready Refresh. And Dana, how much does an office get for every app? The office for Ready Refresh?
It's $108.
180 or 108?
108.
108. Okay, so still 400 apps, even with whatever the installs, she's looking at close to a 35K wire every single week. The profit margins are great. On top of that, she just promoted Missy, who's one of the top owners in Assurance Wireless in California. She just promoted Chan, who I just got to see. Congrats to Chan out in Arizona, and that's where she is right now. She just promoted Devin into charity, and she's about to promote Zach onto Ready Refresh into Denver. Her goal is to be an RC by March, and she wants to be an NC by 2022. So Dana, congrats on all your success. We're really excited to hear from you today. And I know you're going to get into your topic, but what has been the big reason, do you think, why you've been able to out recruit everybody else in door-to-door and go on such a run that you're on?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things, and funny enough, it relates to the field. So I know there's kind of this stigma of like, oh, well, retail, it's so much easier to recruit, right? Because you're inside, it's 75 and, breezy all year round. So we recruited like mad in retail. So when I got to door-to-door, I didn't really know anything else, right? My mentality was, well, we have to have 100 open names a day. We've got to be sitting down with, 30 first rounds per day, and I need to be sending out 15. So my mentality, I didn't have that, I guess, notion of, oh, door-to-door is so much harder. I just did what I always had to do. So it's kind of like when, a leader who's been in the business a while goes into a territory and they have that, preconceived notion of like, oh, this is a hard territory, so it can't happen. And then a brand new, fresh, new guy has no preconceived notions of that territory and they go out and kill it. So I think it's just, not prejudging the situation and doing what I always knew how to do. And that's volume and making sure. So, but I think also it's really picking the scabs of our results. So for instance, I think it was two and a half months ago, my leaders were like, I hope they're listening. They're kind of like hyenas. They're like, we need second rounds. We need second rounds every day. Where's my second round? And so I dug into the actual cold, hard results of what every leader's conversion and their retention was. And it was pretty bad, right? It was like 30%. So we put our head down and we spent hours in the week just nitpicking and practice pitching and going over rebuttals and going over pay and hours and how they were packaging and presenting their second round interview. And since then, their retention has shot up massively to about like 60+% per leader. Wow. So it's just intense action.
And you were telling me before the call that you spend a lot of money on recruiting, right? Yes. And I know for owners that are listening, that when you hear that, sometimes people get intimidated by it. But one of the things you do is you give yourself a chance to fix problems, right? So if an owner is not sending out enough day of observations, it's hard to look at the data and then make a huge leap. Because if you go from 30% to 60%, but you're only sending out 4 day of observations, or 5, you're going from 2 to 3, right? The jump is very, very small. But when you're sending out 12 and 14 day of observations a day, that 30% jump to 60% is dramatic, right? But it all starts with you investing up front. And your leaders must feel really good knowing that anybody that comes into your office that gets into leadership has a really, really good shot of getting promoted. And so, that's something for everybody to take note of. And if you're a leader in an office where your owner's not sending out 10 day of O's a day, you should become a hyena like the leaders in Dana's office and start bugging your owner and saying, hey, where's my day of O? I set the pace last week. I'm here to build my team. Where's my day of O? And I think that's something across the board we can all learn from. So Dana, you're going to talk about recruiting today. And I think it's really, really important for everybody that's listening to take notes, but also ask questions, right? We have the chat. We want to make sure the chat gets filled up with questions throughout, because this is a very, very in-depth topic. Recruiting is not as simple as just, hey, just interview somebody. There's a lot of dynamics to it. And Dana's going to cover those today. So I'm really excited. I'm going to take a ton of notes. And Dana, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So perfect, guys. So for today's call, I could probably run 10 to 15 different types of leaders meetings on second rounds and just day of O's and recruiting in general, because that is the bloodline of our business and it's so important. So I was writing my kind of outline for this call, and I wanted to make it very just useful and tangible for you guys to apply even today in a second round if you have one. So, I know that kind of preface, every single office does things a little bit different, which is fine. Some offices do a whole day of O in the field where the person is, they start in the office and they go out to the field for 4+ hours. They get to really see LOA play out. Where some offices do a 30-minute short second round in the office. They never see the field. They just talk about the field. So really, we're not going to get too much in the details of that and those specifics. I really just want to go over the most mechanical, basic skill sets that make someone a great recruiter. So the first thing I wanted to go over is kind of knowing our audience and knowing who we're recruiting, right? I think since the pandemic, from my years in the business, since the pandemic, this has been the most interesting year of recruiting ever. It's been like, the months that were typically really good were kind of not, or the months that weren't typically, were typically bad, were actually like booming this year. So it's really, there's so much going on in our world, and, with the job market, especially, that we have to really keep up with that and know exactly who we're recruiting and what factors are so important to those people. So of course there's outliers, right? But the two biggest groups that we recruit from is Gen Z and millennials, right? And I know I see a lot of funny memes about like Gen Zs making fun of millennials and vice versa, but either way, we're recruiting both groups of people. So understanding that, do your research, Gen Zs, it's like 82%, they say that they feel a need for speed, right? They want fast growth. They don't want to be at a company for 3-5 years until they grow up. And until they move up in the company. They want speed, they want quickness, they want fast paced. So I know already that's what I'm going to hit on in my interview. Also for Gen Z, culture is a priority. It says that, millennials and Gen Z are more likely to take a job with lower pay if they believe the position is going to give them some sort of culture and belonging within a group. So I need to know that while I'm doing my interviews. The 5 things that millennials and Gen Zs look for in a job. The first one is they value purpose over paychecks, which is huge. They want to feel like they're doing something and instead of just showing up for work, doing a job. The second thing is they want skills developed. A job that helps cultivate, develop, and grow skill sets drives this generation. So that's probably, it lines up perfectly with what we do. I'm going to hit on how much they are going to develop and the skill sets that they're going to learn and earn during this training program. The third thing is they want a coach, not a boss. This is huge, right? And they look at, as you do the second round as a leader, a lot of people look at the leader as like, that's their boss, right? They're the ones they're telling that they're going to be late to the office or whatever the case is. So they want a coach, they want a leader, not just a manager or a boss. The fourth thing that's most important is regular feedback is crucial. So they want to know that they can learn from you and take advice from you. And then the fifth one is work-life cohesiveness. So, instead of having two separate lives, one for work and one outside of life, this generation believes that their job isn't just a career, it's their life too. So kind of understanding how to mesh the two together is really important when you just knowing who you're really talking to. So that's kind of just knowing your audience and who we're recruiting. So we can go ahead and get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is this is the bare bones basics of recruiting is attracting people to you. That's recruiting. There's so many different opportunities, especially in a lot of cities that you guys are in. You're probably not the only, opportunity that has growth this quick, right? There's probably other offices on other campaigns that offer the exact same opportunity, right? So what's going to really set you apart is how well you are at attracting people to you, right? It's about how you walk, how you talk, how you dress, how you act. Even something as small, this sounds so minuscule, but even as something as small as C factors, the moment that you meet your second round interview, walking up to them with your shoulders back, you're looking them in the eye, you're enthusiastic that they're there. So it's such a tiny thing, but we ran a whole entire leaders meeting on just the approach when you walk up to someone. Do you look them in the eye? Do you shake their hand? I always say I could be sitting down with an applicant and they could have 20 years of marketing experience and sales experience, but if they don't know how to look me in the eye and shake my hand with confidence, then I'm not really excited about that. You've got to understand that these people that you're interviewing, they're also interviewing you at the same time. They want to know if you have a personality. Are you funny? Do you pick up on social cues? Are you aware of the surroundings? Are you professional? That's part of the business, and it's funny. I always talk about, if I had it my way, I would wear leggings and a, baggy t-shirt and my hair in a ponytail every single day, because I'm just that way. I'm kind of a tomboy. But I understand that in the workplace, as a professional adult, like, perception is reality. So I know that I've got to throw a blazer on. I've got to wear some makeup. I've got to do my hair. If you're a guy, suit and tie. First impressions are everything. So, and it starts with the way we look and the way we dress, right? The next one is, are you impressive? Do you speak with confidence? Do you, have the power of the pause? Are you just over talking and talking really fast? Do you have good examples? Do you have anything in your past that you're bringing up that makes you impressive, right? Are you enunciating how you package and present things? The next one is, do they want to be in your position? This is the biggest thing. When people come into the door and they're looking to start a role, the first thing people do is look around the room and think, do I want to be in their position? I remember when I first started the business, my owner, she would walk in every day. She always had her Starbucks cup of coffee. And when I started, I couldn't afford Starbucks every day. So I looked at her and the way she presented herself and the way she walked and talked. And I just knew that I wanted to be in her position. When she entered the room or when she introduced me to someone, she was confident, she was kind, she was, she had this sense of control among her that I wanted that role. I had no idea what she did at the time, but I knew I wanted to be in that position. The next one is, do they want to follow you because you have goals? And then do they see the drive and the passion in you? I think a lot of times people will be a little too corporate, or, maybe you're a 21-year-old person on this call and you're kind of acting like this executive manager. I think of the word executive, I think of like old men in oil and gas, right? But in reality, that's not what is important. What is important is if they know that you have goals and they see the drive and the passion of how you speak about the business. I always get the same compliment during my first round interviews. They're like, man, you just have so much passion for what you're doing. Or I can just tell that you really want to go places with this, and just the way you speak with conviction and passion, that really attracts me to your company. So I teach that same exact thing to my leaders. Are they, for example, are they going into, yeah, so we do door-to-door sales. It's pretty cool. We make good money. I'm really hoping to be an executive one day, or a manager one day. There's not a lot of passion behind that, right? You've got to speak with some conviction. So that's the first thing, guys, is just attracting people to you. That's recruiting. So I even challenge you guys, go through that list and see which ones you're missing, right? Do some personal inventory and see which ones maybe you aren't as professional as you could be. Maybe you're not speaking with passion. Maybe it's your suit. Maybe it's the way you look. But either way, go through that list and see which ones you guys are missing. Cool.
Wow, that's really good stuff. I have a question. So, and maybe you're going to hit on it, but you said the whole C factors and the way that you teach your leaders how to introduce themselves. I'm assuming as well, you're teaching your leaders how to, when they're sitting across from someone, how to sit. And I know we don't even think of that sometimes, but if you're interviewing somebody and you're really leaned over and you're like, looks like you're kind of like desperate, that can be awkward. Or if you're too relaxed, do you teach like body posture when people are sitting with people explaining the training program?
Absolutely. Even down to the point where, say, the second round is standing in the lobby waiting on the leader to come. It's even like down to the T of when you shake their hand, and I make sure I shake all my leaders' hands so I can tell they don't have like the limp fish hand, but they shake their hand, you look them in the eye, and then you turn your body so you're kind of side by side with the applicant, which that shows like, hey, we're buddies now, right? So it goes from professional, eyes, shake hands, shoulders back, turn, okay, now we're buddies. This is what we're gonna do. So it kind of brings that guard down, especially when they're sitting down. I teach, even when you're asking a question, you're smiling. And then as soon as they're responding to the question, you stop smiling and start writing, right? The way you sit. One thing I've really noticed on new leaders that interview, they get nervous. So if they're sitting in a rolly chair, they kind of tend to like be doing this the entire interview and like going, yep. So something as simple as that. So absolutely, those details matter.
Yeah. And you guys just know, like Dana said, that the applicant's interviewing you, right? So a part of, your ability to recruit someone is to show confidence at all different phases. And we teach this in the field, right? Your body posture, your C factors. And I was telling Dana, like, recruiting is its own campaign. It's its own product. You got to imagine as if, if you're on the water campaign or you're on 5G, you're on AT&T, Verizon, whatever it is, you're an expert of that product. You got to look at recruiting as becoming an expert of that product and all the different intangibles that go into it. So as you guys see why Dana is so good at recruiting, is she's thinking about all these little details that I think some of us gloss over. So, and I know we got a question that just popped in, but we'll save some of these questions for the end if they're not specifically related to the topic you just went over. But keep them coming, guys.
Okay, cool. All right, perfect. So the next part I want to talk about is packaging and presenting information. Like how you do that is everything in this business, not just in recruiting, but everything, right? Elise put a nice little quote there, said anyone can understand anything. You just have to know how to present the information. So the first thing I want to talk about is, how to kind of make things a little more sexy. Okay. I know that sounds funny, but so for instance, I've sat in on a lot of new leaders interviews. And when it gets to the time where they're talking about the field, I've heard something as blunt as like, yeah, we are out in the streets knocking on doors. Right. And if I was a new or an applicant, I would be scared to death of that, right? So it's finding the balance of still being transparent in what we do. We never want to lie, and we honestly want to be proud of what we do, but it's gaining the skill set of how to package and present it in a very sexy way, right? So instead of saying, yeah, we're out in these streets going door to door, I would say something like, yeah, so, our clients, our multi-billion dollar clients, they asked us to do something a little more old school. And that was, instead of, meeting our customers over the phone or in a retail store, they asked us to go face to face directly to their home, right? So we get to bring not only the product and service, but we get to back it up with our personality, and a relationship built within that first 5 seconds. So, and it turns out it works. Boom. And then you talk about the results. So that's a little more sexy than just saying we out in these streets knocking on doors, right? So the next thing with like packaging and presenting I want to talk about is something called parroting. Okay. And I know that it's not on the presentation, but I've done a lot of networking with people that don't know what parroting is. And basically what parroting is if you ask someone a question, probably in the resume building or when you're going over their resume or at the end when you're challenging them, it's asking them a question. Like, say the question is, what are you looking for in your next position? They say, I'm looking for upward mobility because my last position, I kind of hit a glass ceiling. So everything that the applicant says, I'm going to come back and repeat basically what they said, but in a better way, right? So if Van tells me, I'm looking for upward mobility because my last job, I kind of hit the glass ceiling. I'm going to say, okay, Van, so it sounds like you really want to sink your teeth into something and grow, not only temporarily, but something that has long lasting growth where you're never satisfied and always continue to be challenged, right? And I just made that up, but what that does is, one, it makes you sound smart, and smarter than them. You're a good parroter if the applicant then comes back and says, yes, exactly. Right. So parroting that way. And the second thing it does is it shows that you're engaged. It shows that you're an active listener and you're really absolutely 100% focused on them, which makes them feel important and like you're taking this position seriously. So that's a big part about packaging and presenting. If you ever want to see this in live form, hop on a Ready Refresh call because Joy is one of the best parroters I've ever heard. So that's something to really practice in all aspects of your day. Because once you become good at packaging and presenting things in more of a sexy way, you become a great recruiter.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been working on that, and I learned parroting. I was in Seattle, and it was a retail meeting. It was like an owner's like regional retail meeting, and I was probably an owner for like 2 or 3 years, and I came in. It was one of the NCs for retail, and he like went over parroting, and I was like, what is this? And oh my, it's a game changer. And
Yep.
and I was doing it before, but I didn't know what I was doing. You know what I mean? Like we learn it, but you don't know what it is. And it's so impactful when leaders. I was listening to a leader's interview, and when you ask them a question like you just said, hey, what are you looking for, or what are your goals, and they say, oh, my goal is to move into management, and then you just say, okay, that's kind of stale. Like the person just thinks, was that answer good enough? Should I say more? So what you guys heard Dana do is she like basically packages their answer and makes it shiny and nice, and like she said, it shows engagement, and it shows that it's almost like an agreeable moment. Like you're both like, yeah, oh my God, we're the same person. And it really does help. So if you didn't take notes on that, be sure to do that, because that is a major, major game changer. If you want interviews to like look at you and think, you think like them and they think like you.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, perfect. So then the next part I want to talk about is how well do you know the business, right? So if someone were if Van told me, hey, I'm gonna have you run a Zoom call and you're gonna go over video games, I don't know anything about video games. I'm like the person that if I play Call of Duty, I'm like the character that's just running into the wall over and over because I don't even know how to walk, right? So I don't know how to talk about video games because I don't know video games, right? But I know the business, and to be an incredible recruiter, you've got to know the business. You've got to know it inside and out. I always think about the kind of an example when it comes to like dating. It's like you want to have game. We've all seen the guys, no offense to all the guys on the call, but we've all seen the guys that have zero game. They come up, they're trying to buy you a drink. It's like almost painful, what they're doing. They don't have that confidence. But then when you meet a guy who has game, they know what they're doing. They're confident. They're speaking well. They're, all of that. They have game because they know what they're doing. So my biggest focus is teaching my leaders how to have game in the business. And I loved how Van talked about earlier that if you think about recruiting or the second round interview as its own campaign, you should know exactly what you're talking about, right? So if you're on AT&T or Nestle or whatever, if a customer comes to you and they ask you a question about your product, I mean, I'm pretty positive that everyone on this call would know the exact rebuttal to give. So it's the exact same thing in the second round interview. And it's practicing this over and over. So you say it with ease and with confidence. So the first one is rebuttals, right? The beauty of this business and what makes this business very simple is it's very cyclical, right? I rarely get a rebuttal or a question in the interview that I've never heard before, right? So history tends to repeat itself. So I know that applicants are going to ask about commission only. They're going to be freaked out about it. So I'm going to do some research. Larry just sent out this amazing excerpt on why people would never want a salary and why that's like the worst thing that you could ever want in your life, because companies tell you, Van, you're worth only 60,000. Regardless of what you do, you're only going to make 60,000. So have you read those articles, and do you have game when it comes to answering the commission only section? Same thing about benefits. Have you practiced pitch that answer to benefits every single time? So when it comes up, you know exactly what to say. We know that people are going to ask about door to door. Is it safe? Is it scary? Do dogs run after you? Do people slam the door on you? They're freaked out about that. Well, I know that. So I'm going to maybe look at really famous people like who's the Dallas Mavericks owner?
Mark Cuban.
So Mark Cuban started door to door. So why not do some research and pull some quotes that he wrote about on why starting door to door was the best thing that could have ever happened to him. Now he's a multi-billionaire, right? So when someone asks me about door to door and I come back with a quote from Mark Cuban plus a good answer, there's no chance that they're not going to be excited about it. So it's like having game on those rebuttals. The next thing is understanding the business model. I was just floored by the interview that Larry and Raf did the other day. And the way that Raf just understands the business model, that's, in my opinion, where you're going to find really your passion, like I talked about earlier when you're talking about the business. Understanding that we're offered an opportunity where we don't have to put any capital down. We don't have to, put ourselves into a building. Our promoting owner does that. We don't have to, we're getting a master's in business and leadership, and yet we're getting paid to do so. The only risk we take as leaders is investing time, effort, and energy, or what I like to call sweat equity, right? So like understanding the business model will really help you find that passion when you're talking about it. So the applicants are really attracted to that. Can you answer any question, right? Especially when you answer questions, you're re-challenging them just like ABC in the field. The next part about just knowing the business is how well are you at reading and recognizing people? There's all different types of people that we interview. There's the cocky people, There's like the shyer, maybe a little more insecure type of people. There's just like the fun people that just like want the party. Those are like the 7 Enneagrams that just like want culture and fun and they're excited. So becoming a beast in recruiting is learning how to read and recognize these different types of people and really challenging them or building rapport, when to fear of loss, when to like absolutely just tell them, hey, I love you. I think you'd be great, because it's different with every single person. Whenever I interview older men, right? Especially early on in my business when I was a little younger, when I was interviewing a 45, 50-year-old guy that's had an incredible career, I knew I had to sit up a little bit stronger. I had to use more powerful words. I had to challenge them a little bit more, right? Versus the young girl that just graduated from University of Houston and she wants to get good at sales. She loves culture. I'm going to build more of a relationship with her and try to connect with her more. So it's really reading and recognizing people. But the way to get good at this, guys, is breaking down your interviews with your mentor and coach. So right after your interview ends, you pick up the phone and you talk about, okay, how did I read and recognize this person? And how did I cater my second round interview to them to attract them to me, right? So Jeff Bezos says, if you do not understand the details of the business, you are going to fail. The more you know, the more confident you are in speaking about it.
So Dana, that's amazing. And I think like when I was new, when I was doing interviews, you mentioned like rebuttals and how important it is to have like confident answers with them, because one rebuttal could be the reason why the person doesn't start, right?
Yep.
And you guys might think, well, I have the whole interview down, right? I know how to explain, commission, but as soon as they have a rebuttal about it, if your answer isn't confident, the impulse can just drop. And all of a sudden, everything else about what you're saying, they start to question, right? And we keep relating this to the field because like you can have a great pitch, but it's one objection that you have trouble with. And the customer's like, you know what? No, I'm good. Yep. And so the difference between you guys building your teams and adding 2 or 3 new people to your crew a week could be one objection that you're having an issue with. And I think what she said was super important, was to really take notes on what happened in your interview and immediately go back and get coaching on it. Don't, repeat the same mistakes over and over again because you just kind of think, well, that person wasn't qualified. Maybe they weren't, but you got to look at it like, well, what could I have done better, right? How could I have improved? And then another question I have, Dana, is for people that are trying to get better at understanding the business model, how would you recommend they go about that? When I know there's newer leaders, and of course we have opportunities meetings every Friday, but what are some ways that a leader could get more educated? The way that Raf talked about the business, he's been in the business a little while now, but I remember once I understood like indirect versus direct marketing, advertising, the face-to-face approach, clients, it really helped solidify my own confidence, my own belief, to where I could actually sell the business better. So how do you recommend going about that if there's a leader on the call that maybe doesn't have the knowledge of the whole business yet?
Yeah. So, even when it comes to meetings, I always tell my guys, hey, you're going to hear me run similar meetings multiple times, and of course I'm going to try to mix it up every time, so I don't just sound like a broken record and people fall asleep. Right. But I tell my leaders, I'm like, hey, the first time you hear the meeting about the business model, you're taking notes, you're digesting it. The second time I run it, I don't want you to take notes on what I'm writing. I want you to take notes on why I'm running it, who I'm trying to, connect with that day, and then ask your own questions so we can set up a one-on-one and go in depth of things that you don't understand. Now, by the third time I run that meeting, I tell them you should be able to run it. So part of our cycle of development going through, we have like 5-month pagers, I guess you could say, once they get into leadership. And part of that cycle of development is like teaching the business model back to me. So it's kind of up to them to network about it, set up their own one-on-ones about it, go through their old notes and see if they can run that meeting just like I did, maybe before the office starts with a group of 3-4 people. But I think the biggest thing is pick up the phone and ask, right? I think all of us owners, we love talking about the business because it's it's our lives. It's changed our lives for the better, right? So the business model is such a beautiful model that we get really excited about talking about it. So I really suggest picking up the phone, sitting down with your owner, and then you try to run these opportunity meetings with a small crew. Because once the more you do it, the more you rep it out, the better you become, and the more, questions you can answer about it.
Yeah. And I recommend guys, like, when we teach people, when you go in the field, write down the 3 most common objections that give you trouble. In the interview, write down the objections that really give you trouble, the things that you're most afraid of that they'll ask, and then attack those head on with your mentor, with your coach. And then, like, Dana said, that the networking thing is huge. Like, just set up a call with one of Dana's leaders, like set up a call with someone that is a top recruiter in a top office, and pick their brain. And we've talked about traveling more in our business and seeing bigger operations. One call with one of those leaders can completely change your perspective, because you hear Dana talk, like, well, you guys are, you're really good. You've been doing this for a while. But then when you hear it from a leader that's in your position, that's building a huge team, it can really click. So another way to kind of get better faster as well. So awesome stuff, Dana.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of to piggyback off of that, the way to get good at these rebuttals, there's no secret sauce. It's really just putting in the time and repping it out. I say the person that goes over how to say pay or how to talk about door to door, instead of listening to the radio on the way to work, they go over it 30 times in the car. Hands down, 100% of the time, they're going to be better at packaging and presenting it, just because they've put the practice in.
Nice. Very true.
All right, cool. And then, so last but not least, I'm going to go, we'll probably kind of skip over how to read and challenge on a resume. It's, that's a whole another thing, but Elise, if you want to pop forward to the 12 steps to an interview. Yes. So, again, you guys, kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, I know every single office does the things a little bit different. But I wanted to kind of share with you guys what we do in our office. And we've done this since retail back probably 3-4 years by now. And it's 12 steps to an interview, but I want you guys to kind of more so look at it on, these are 12 things that you must have in every single interview. So you might switch up the order a little bit, or maybe you include 4 of them and you're doing 5 steps to an interview, whatever the case is. But these are 12 things, in my opinion, based off of just my experience, are absolutely necessary to have in every single interview. The first thing is the intro, right? So in the intro, very simply, I'm getting to know them. I'm introducing myself with specific credentials, right? And I'm kind of going over expectations, what the day is going to look like. So that's it, right? A wow on the business model. So I want to get them to give me a wow on something I said about the business model. This has been a game changer for us. If the leader talks about, hey, we took our business model and we took ideas from the Chick-fil-A, MIT program, the Bentley MIT program. We kind of combined that with other sources that we found to work. And every single person starts entry level, including Dana, or including the person that did your first round interview. What's amazing about the business model is we're looking for a very small percentage of the population that wants to grow very quickly. Now, if that person, if it is for that person, we teach everything. The front of house, back of house, everything in between. So within 6 to 8 months, we go from, an entry level sales and marketing representative into a market manager overseeing and managing an entire territory and campaign on their own. I'm going to pause and wait for them to say, wow.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the wow on the business model. Now I want to get a wow on the client. I think it's very, very important that you do make the client the star of the show. And it's funny because our clients, it's almost impossible not to get a wow on our clients, right? We work with the largest clients in the world. We generate over half of their new client customer acquisitions for almost every single client we do. And that's impressive. So at some point in the interview, I want them to be like, wow, your clients that you work with are unbelievable. That shows that there's job security for these people. That shows that the money is going to be there. Throwing out a big name like Ready Refresh or AT&T or T-Mobile, these are big name companies that we want to make sure they're the star of the show because it shows credibility on our end. The next thing is talking about the field, right? I do a tiny bit of heavy lifting in my first round, but I give the leaders the heavy lifting on the field. Because I want them, when they talk about the field, I want them to talk about building an appreciation for the field. I have them all have their own script of like, what have they learned from the field and why are they better for it, right? What maybe they talk about how they were freaked out about going, they didn't want to do it. They were nervous and they thought maybe this wasn't for me, until they realized, even after a week of putting themselves out there and working on themselves, they're an incredibly more confident person. Their communication skills are through the roof, fill in the blank, right? So I want them to talk about the field, but why they're so excited about what they're learning from the field. The next one is make them feel special. This sounds a little corny and a little cheesy, but people like to be, to feel special. So at some point in the interview, I'm going to build this person. No one's gonna, if I went to an interview and the person interviewing me was kind of a jerk and just had no interest in me, I would be like, I don't know if I want to work for that person or with that person. So at some point in the interview, I am making the applicant feel special. I'm going to be like, hey, Van, I really noticed that, just in the short time that we've been together today, that you're really engaged and you seem like, you're really interested in finding the right opportunity, which says a lot about your character. You're not just willing to settle for a job, but you're looking for something really, impressive, which, I like that about you, right? Something that has nothing to do with the business, but something about them. If Van knows that I like him or, give him a compliment, automatically he likes me more. Cool?
Yep.
Next one is pay. Obviously, break it down, right? You answer pay exactly how it works. The way you package and present pay is very important, right? We start with a range of average paychecks are $800 to $1,200 per week, but this is how it breaks down. We talk about commission and we talk about the potential that someone could make. Then we ask them. So the pay is very kissed. You have to have eye contact when you're talking about pay. If you don't have eye contact when you're talking about pay, you will lose that interview. It's just like in the field. If someone asks you how much and you look away, they're sketched out. They're not going to buy. Same thing with pay. I'm kind of leaning forward. I'm looking them in the eye. I'm writing things down so it's 100% clear and you're 100% confident on it. That is a game changer. The next one is schedule or hours, right? The schedule, it's very kissed, very just straight to the point. This is what it is, right? Because I know my audience of Gen Z and millennials, they have a big thing with, work and personal time and that work-life balance. So I'm going to talk about, instead of saying, on Saturday, we go 9 to 4, I'm going to say, hey, and Saturday's a half day. And then we go out and play volleyball every single Friday. I'm going to bring it back right into that. But hours is very kissed, very simple, very to the point. It is what it is. But this is why we're looking for someone that wants to invest the time now, is because later on, they have complete control of their hours. All right, the next thing we have to talk about in every interview, because again, we know that culture is huge and a huge priority of Gen Z and millennials. So travel and culture. I'm talking about, I teach my leaders how to talk about their experience, how they love that it's a people building people atmosphere, how it's not just, coworkers that, like in a restaurant setting or in a retail setting. It's a culture of accountability. We give each other credit where credit's due and we hold each other accountable. But we love to hang out. I always say every single Friday we go play beach volleyball. It gets, the gloves come off, everyone's out for blood. It's a ton of fun. And then I coach my leaders how to talk about the travel opportunities that they've been on. Now, if they haven't been on any, I'd have them talk about the R&Rs or things that other people in the office have been on. Cool. After that is questions. So I ask them, at this point, do you have any questions, Van? Okay. If I did my job correctly, I shouldn't get any questions on travel, pay, hours, benefits, nothing like that. The questions that I'm really looking for are questions like, why did you start the position? Or what are your goals? Or where do you feel like the company's trajectory is in 5 years from now? What do you like most about what you do? Those kind of questions are great because they want to know more. But if you're getting questions like, okay, wait, what are the hours? What are the pay? What is this? Right? Then it means that you've got some work to do in terms of how you're packaging and presenting those things. Cool. Yeah. Then you challenge them. I would say 2 to 3 challenge questions. And then fear of loss them, and then wrap it up. And then what are the next steps? It's really important that you have a good system with your recruiter or with your manager, because if you tell a person that, hey, if selected for a position, you'll get a call between 2 and 4, and then your owner doesn't call them till 6, it's not a good look. So it's making sure everything is tightened up throughout the whole entire process. But yeah, so that's kind of the 12 things that we have to include in every single interview. And you can even use it as like a checklist as you're going through the interview, that you're hitting every single thing and not missing anything.
Nice.
But yeah, that's about it.
Wow. Well, one of the things that, you guys will notice about Dana that I think makes her successful, and it bleeds into her leaders, is just she's very structured, and I think like the part that makes our business work and function is that there's a structure to it. You know what I mean? At the highest level, but then at the macro, but then what Dana does so well is she takes it all the way down to the micro. So when you're a leader in an office and you don't have a structure, or there's not a consistency you can go to, whether it's an interview booklet that you guys use, or it's, notes. I remember in my interviews, I used to have my notes, right? So what to say next underneath their resume, right? So if I was a new leader, I would have this, 12 steps, and I'd be looking at the resume and I'd be looking underneath it and saying, interesting. And I'd pretend like I'm looking at some other thing, but then I would know, okay, the next step is this. And when you know what to do next, that's where the confidence comes in, right? Because we've done some interview shadowing, and you hear the okay, and that's not good. Like, you don't want to have those awkward silences. So Dana, for you, like when you and we'll go into the questions here in a second, but when someone gets promoted to leadership, I'm assuming like this is such an important part that you immediately start teaching, and you require leaders to have memorized.
Yes. So we actually have a one-on-one packet for new leaders, and there's 12 one-on-ones they have to do about the interview, and they have to test out with their interview to me by 10 days into leadership.
Nice.
So memorized, they have to know the 12 steps and go from there.
That's awesome. All right, well, we got questions. So let's do this. Okay, so first question is, what's the best way to balance life cohesiveness? I guess probably with the business and the fact that we are putting in a lot more hours, and this is, front loaded for someone that wants to move up fast. So we don't want to paint the picture that, hey, this is this, easy schedule and you're just going to chill. So how do you present that to people and then paint the picture properly?
Yeah, good question. So I kind of run the meeting within the second round of the 40-40-60-10 plan. So it's like 93% of the country would rather work for 40 years of their life or 40 hours a week for 40 years of their life. So the math ends up being like 40 hours times 52 weeks times 40 years. It's like 83,000 hours that 93% of the population works until retirement. So I talk about, we're really looking for people that want to be more on the 60-10 plan, that are willing to maybe give up a Saturday and work longer hours in the short end. Because 60 hours times 52 weeks times 10 years is only 31,000 hours. So I have that written on paper, and I talk about it, and I tell them, and I'm like, hey, it's not your typical clock in, clock out 9 to 5, right? But the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm kind of innately lazy. I don't want to work this hard when I'm 45 years old. I don't want to, be my parents that are still working at 60. So I would rather put in the time now. So I relate to them. I give them that example of the 60, 60, 40 or 60, 10, 40, 40 plan. And then I ask them, like, which plan do you want to be on? And it's just like when we're building a team, we don't want to retain everyone, right? So it's like, we don't want to hire everyone, right? Of course, when we're on the fence, we give everyone a shot. But if they're like, no, I don't want that, then they're not for the business, and that's okay, right? But it's again about packaging and presenting it in a sexier way by an example or maybe a study that you look up online or something versus just saying, yeah, we work a lot.
Nice. Yeah. And I think it's like, you got to own it. And I think your confidence in owning it as a leader and being proud of the fact that you're working hard, but you're growing. I think it's kind of like, why do people go to the gym and work out? It's because they want to grow. They want to get in better shape. And so that becomes attractive when people see that you're excited about working hard and you're excited about growth. You'll attract people that are also excited about that. If you're embarrassed by it, or you feel bad about the fact that you work Saturdays, or you put in more time and you kind of feel like, oh, I'm afraid to say that, then people are going to look at you and be like, man, this person doesn't even have the confidence in what they're doing. And that's going to turn off people that normally would be excited to work hard. And you might end up attracting people who are trying to just get by. And you don't necessarily want those people. You kind of want to turn those people off. And that's okay too. Just like Dana said, you're not looking to close everyone. You're looking to attract those special people, right? But you don't want to come across overbearing. You got to tailor yourself to the interview, right? Okay, so the next one is any specific ways that you like to challenge interviews? Any questions that you usually ask them?
Yeah, so one of my favorite questions is, because again, people want to follow people that are going places and have goals. So I start the question with like, hey, so, and I'm speaking as if I'm a leader. So I'm like, hey, so, the reality is I am going to be in this market manager position within the next 3 months, and the reason why it's so important to me is because I want to give back to my parents who always gave to me, even if they didn't have anything to give. I want to make a difference in nonprofit. And, the fact of the matter is you need money to do that, right? So those are the reasons why I'm going to make it to this market manager position. And I spend a lot of time, effort, and energy into developing the people that are on my team. So, Van, what about you would make it a good return on my investment to invest my time, effort, and energy into you? So that's one question. I mean, you can ask them, what's a challenge that you've been through that you had to overcome in regards to attitude, work ethic, there's so many different challenge questions. And I'm pretty sure every single leader's binder, or even if you Google, great challenge questions for people, you can kind of come up with your own, but that's an example of a couple of them.
Yeah. You want to have 5 to 10, right, in your arsenal that you can ask throughout the day. At different points and, at different times. And if you don't have those, for sure, you got to get them. You got to practice those, because without challenging interview questions, people feel like they just have the job, right? Those challenging interview questions is what keeps the balance of hot and cold, right? So when you're, there's a question here that asks about how do you make them feel special? Well, Dana will do that, but then she'll also combat it with, so what makes you feel like you deserve the position? Why should I invest my time into you? What would make you feel like you're an asset to us, right? So you have to have that balance. What are some examples of fear of loss in the second interview?
Yeah. So, at the end, I'm talking about, hey, it's been really nice getting to know you. And I know that, we have a lot of qualified applicants. So we're going to be sitting down as a management team, just kind of going over the pros, the cons of every single applicant. But, either way, it was a pleasure meeting with you. If you do get selected, you'll get a call between 2 and 4. But either way, I wish you the best of luck on your career search. Have a good day. Right. So I'm very kind, but I'm wishing them the best of luck on their career search. And they're kind of like, wait, did I not get the job? Right. So it's little tiny things like that. Other applicants, we're going to, weigh the concerns, the positives. I can put in a good word for you, but I can't guarantee that. There's so many different wordings. It's just like in the field of fear of lossing the whole time, but it's very indifferent. I'm like, but either way, best of luck on your career search.
Yeah, and you guys gotta fear loss them with the other applicants, right?
Yeah.
So Dana's job's really easy for her, or the leader's job's really easy because they're like, hey, we got 10 other qualified candidates in the lobby, and they've all informed us that they can start right away. So if you were to get the position offered to you, when can you start?
Yeah.
Right? Or saying, hey, amongst the group, why do you feel like you'd be the best fit? Using the other applicants as a way to make them compete for the position. Those are all really good stuff. Questions are just flying in everywhere. So, Dana, you might be asked to do another call because there are so many questions. Can you go back to the 5 things, or no, that wasn't on a slide. The 5 things that the Gen Z look for: purpose over paychecks. I mean, you have this. Why don't you tell them?
So the first one is they value purpose over paychecks. The second one is they want skill development. So they want to develop some type of skill. Third one is they want a coach, not a boss. Number 4, regular feedback is crucial. And then number 5 is work-life cohesiveness.
Okay, there you go. And then, okay, sorry to get 1 or 2 more in here. How would you dismiss someone who has the wrong attitude? How to politely end the interview if you could tell they're not excited and they're being kind of negative?
Yeah, so I think 2 ways I do this. So if they're kind of negative, but I can tell that they don't want to be there, like they're sketched out on commission, or they don't like that it's door to door, and I can just tell that they don't want to be there, I'll call it out and I'll be like, hey, Van, does this sound like this is something even that, interests you or excites you to dig into? Van's probably going to be like, no, not really. I'll be like, hey, so that is exactly why we do these second rounds, because we want to be extremely transparent in what we do. We would never want someone to start with our company and then come around a day later like, wait, what? I have to go door to door. So this is exactly why we do this. And hey, Van, I think, you've got some great qualities. I think whatever you do next, you're gonna set the pace, and you're gonna hit the ground running, because there's a lot I enjoyed out of you today. So out of respect for you, I want to just respect your time and say, hey, it's probably not the best fit, but either way, it was such a pleasure meeting with you, and I wish you the best of luck. So it's very polite. I want to kind of like PR the situation, right? I'm like, this is exactly why we do this, because we don't want to waste your time. Instead of Van thinking, oh, I wasted my time coming here.
Yep.
And I compliment them, right? Even if I don't mean it. I'm like, hey, that's business, right? You want to leave a good taste in their mouth.
And you guys hear this all the time, kill the customer with kindness, right?
Yes.
So a customer, they walk outside the door, they're pissed. Your job is not to argue with them. There's no winning in an argument with a customer. Well, there's no winning in an argument with an applicant. And it's just as important that applicant leaves on a good note if it's not for them, because of the online world. And we've seen that, when leaders or owners don't treat people respectfully, it can end up hurting the recruiting funnel that they have. And so you got to respect people's time. You got to respect that they drove to the office that day. You got to, say, hey, I know, and Dana said, this is exactly why we do the interview. So it's like, as soon as they feel like something went wrong, you say, that's okay. That's actually why we're doing this. So you relieve some of their, stress. And then you finish with, hey, you seem like a great person. I think there's a lot of good qualities. That's why we're being transparent. But hey, if it doesn't work, I know that there's something out there you'll find that you'll excel with. So I appreciate the time today, but out of respect for your time, guys, everything she said is so money. So, this is no surprise why Dana's office is crushing it, why her leaders are building crews bigger than any office, and why she's going to become a regional and a national within the next 12 to 18 months, because she's so focused on the details, right? And so there's a really great lesson, not only for owners, but for the leaders, to be detail oriented. The devil's in the details. So, okay, well, we are at our hour mark. There's a few more questions coming through. Dana, I know you're a busy woman. I don't want to, throw out your information if you don't want it thrown out, but I'm assuming there definitely will be emails and calls and requests for another call.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
did you want to, the owners have your email. So maybe the owners, if you're on the call, if you're a leader, bug your owner and say, hey, can we get on a call with either Dana or one of Dana's leaders? And I'm sure as long as the emails are sent out and the contacts are made, Dana would be happy to set that up.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Van. And yeah, reach out to me anytime, guys. Shoot me an email and we can run as many calls as you need.
Well, guys, recruiting is our business. And, you just heard from right now, it's Richard Anderson. There's like, these few people in our business that are the best at recruiting. If you can copy what they're doing, holy crap, you're going to get the results that they're getting. So Dana, thank you so much. One of my favorite calls. Again, one of my favorite people. Have a great rest of your day. Everyone, thank you so much for hopping on the call. We'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.